Welcome back to a new edition of Cult Pop. I'm Jim Hall, and today we've got a spectacular show for you. We've got Brad Meltzer. He's one of my all-time favorite guests on the show. He's an all-around great guy, and he's just a fantastic author. You know him from his work on the Justice League of America, his many New York Times best-selling novels, and now the great new novel, The Book of Lies. A spectacular New York Times bestseller that is just going to be a runaway hit. I'm telling you, it's one of my favorite books of the summer I've read so far. And it's really amazing because it takes one of his passions, Superman, and it makes that an integral part of the novel. So, Brad, thank you so much for being on the show today. The Book of Lies, my favorite book of yours yet. I am absolutely thrilled with the fact that you're able to write a novel that is kind of, it had to be a passion play for you. I know how passionate you are about Superman. You've written about it often in your work with the Justice League and at your blog and all that. You're able to tie Superman and some of that mythology into this novel. Why don't you tell us a little bit, start to give us an idea of what the Book of Lies is all about.
Sure, the Book of Lies begins with the world's first murder, when Cain kills Abel. But the Bible is silent about what the murder weapon is that Cain uses to kill his brother. And as a result, that weapon is lost to history. Now flash forward to 1932, where a man named Mitchell Siegel is killed in a robbery. In grief, his young son comes up with the idea for a bulletproof man that he calls Superman. And this is true, the murder weapon from that murder is lost to this day. So the question is, what are these two murders thousands of years apart,
Right.
one which gives us the world's first villain in Cain, and one which gives us the world's first hero in Superman, possibly have in common? And the answer is in the Book of Lies.
Well, the Book of Lies, like, if that doesn't catch you folks at home and think, wow, I really want to get this, the first chapter, which you can get at Brad's website, Wizard magazine had the first chapter published, will certainly grab you. The first chapter, we meet a young man named Cal, who witnesses just an unbelievable event that starts a tragic young start for his life and his father's life. These two meet up later on, and Cal, being the protagonist, has a lot of dad issues. Can you talk a little bit about Cal, your main hero, a little different from some of your protagonists in the past, but kind of an everyman, so similar in that way, that Cal is kind of a little more of a tortured soul than some
And I think Cal is just a more honest character. You know, when I wrote my first novel, 10th Justice comes out, you get your reviews. Second novel comes out, you get your reviews. By the third novel, a woman writes to me through our website, and she says, Brad, I've read 3 of your novels now. What are your issues with your father? And I hadn't written anything about fathers and sons. It was, one page in every novel, but she got me. She knew me. And I realized in that moment that we put things in these books that I never intend. You put yourself in. So you show me a novel, and I'll show you what I'm dealing with at that time. It is no coincidence. When the Book of Lies began, when I started writing it, my mom was diagnosed with breast cancer.
Right.
I finished writing it, and she finished reading it just before she passed away. And as a result, that's why the main character of the book is dealing with the loss of his mother. I'm just not that subtle. I'm not that good at hiding it. I put it right out there. But I'm thrilled that that's why the book is dedicated to her, and I'm thrilled even for Cal. The issues that he has with his own father certainly mirror the ones I go through with my dad, just in the sense that anyone with a big father knows that they also cast big shadows. And I always say that the book saved me from years of therapy, or at least paying for it. So that's what the Book of Lies definitely hinges on more than anything else.
Well, good for you. Well, with Cal, when we first meet him, he's doing retrieval of homeless people kind of work, and he's obviously a good-hearted, just somebody you think, God, you want something better to happen for this guy. But as the novel gets going, it's not necessarily when things really, after the novel, when we meet the modern day man. His hair is tinged as a gray because he's witnessed something at a young age that's been so hard and everything. But I want to go back to the fact that I just think he was so unique as a protagonist for you. And so is it that he's a lot of you maybe, or is it a...
When I started writing the Book of Lies, the truth is it started in my head 11 years ago. Not even 2 years ago, 11 years ago. I went to my editor, I'd finished my first novel, you got to pitch the second one. And he said, what do you want to do? And I said, I want to do a modern-day thriller, modern-day mystery, but set and using some of the story of Cain and Abel, the great biblical story. And he looked at me and he said, you're an idiot. And what he said was, you're an unknown author. We got you on the bestseller list. We're marketing you as the next John Grisham. Why are you going to go do that? And I had this moment where I could either be really strong and stand up for what I believe in, or I could cave. and I caved faster than anyone in the history of caving because I just barely paid off my loans at the University of Michigan. I felt like I couldn't risk it all there, but this sat in me, and this character in many ways sat in my head, and I don't look back on it and say, well, now I wrote the character and I'm a much better writer now, and that's why Cal is a better character. I think what I am, I don't think I'm a better writer, but what I think I am is I think I'm more honest. And I think if I wrote this book 11 years ago, I would have never been honest about my emotions. Cal is he's not just conflicted, he's complex. I mean, he hates him and loves him in the same breath. He goes, and that's how we all are. We are all spectacular and we're boring, and we're amazing and we're, mundane. We are all of us, all those things. And I think finally I've accepted even in myself that it's okay to be those things. And that's where I think a complex character always comes from.
Well, I'll tell you, Brad, out of all your novels, which I've caught up with now, he's my favorite character. He's the one that I really, all your characters are great, but I really cared about him, and I really thought, doggone it, let's get things right.
And again, it all starts with what I was trying to build. I wanted a character who is us. I mean, it took me 2 years of research to realize that the best part of the Superman story is not the Superman part. The best part is Clark Kent.
Clark Kent, sure.
And why? Because we're all Clark Kent. We all know what it's like to be boring and ordinary and wish we could rip open our shirt and help somebody. And when I was going around and looking for characters, I wanted to find a hero. And I was thinking to myself, do heroes even exist anymore? Do they exist in society? And I found this guy who works with the homeless when I was doing the research, and I said, this guy spends every night making sure people have a place to sleep. If that is not a hero, I don't know what is. And I started building, Cal's background was based on this guy. And, it doesn't mean he's a saint. Not every hero is a winner. The heroes are the ones who try. And you could fail, but if you try, you're still a hero. And I wanted Cal to be that person. He tries and he fails, and he tries and he fails, and there's something that's beautiful in that Charlie Brown never kicked the football away that I felt like the character came alive to me.
I've told you before when we do interviews, I don't like to give too much away from a novel because I don't want to ruin things when people pick it up. But there are two great little character moments for Cal that I loved. Early on in the novel, he's picking a client up, and maitre d' or somebody from an expensive restaurant says, here's $100, here's $50, thanks. He said, no, I don't need to I don't need to take that money.
Yeah, he's stubborn.
And he's stubborn, and he's doing that for his own reasons. Later on in the novel, a similar situation happens, and he's learned a little bit, but instead of taking the money for himself, he says the waiter was going to get a horrible tip, and he says, why don't you just give that to your wait staff? And as a guy who put myself through college waiting tables, I thought, wow, what a cool character.
I put myself through high school scooping ice cream at Haagen-Dazs.
Right, so.
And I know what that's like, and I know what it's like to want that revenge, and I know what it's like also when someone used to snap their fingers at me to get my attention, and it used to really make me mad. I would take my pinky and I'd break the bottom of their cone, and then I'd hand it to them, and then we were 50 feet away. It would be dripping down their shirt, and I would say, that's what you get for snapping. So that was always my revenge.
I would be remiss if I didn't mention, obviously I'm saying I love the book. The book is another one of your tour de forces. Characters are going from Florida to Ohio, California. We go back. There's some history elements that I don't want to give too much away before people read, but it's another one of your classic thrillers, but bringing together elements that from the Cain and Abel to Superman's creator, one would never expect, and it's a hell of a payoff when you really get into the novel.
Yeah, the book started because I was at a book signing for the Book of Fate 2 years ago. Probably last time I saw you. I just left, and a woman stood up at a book signing, and she said to me, I know more about Superman than you'll ever know. And I thought, lady, there's no way you know more about Superman than I know. And she said, no, it's true, because Jerry Siegel, who created Superman, is my uncle. Oh. And I said, oh, that's interesting. And so she was one who invited me, introduced me, I should say, into the family. And it was there that I found out this story that nobody knew, almost nobody knew. And it was because in 50 years of interviews, when they asked Jerry Siegel, where did you get the idea for Superman, he never once says, my dad died in a crime. His dad dies in a crime, and then he creates the world's greatest crime fighter. A couple weeks later, he never tells anybody. And I was obsessed with this story. And that's why the world got Superman, not because America is the greatest country on earth. It's because a little boy lost his father. And I just thought that was a beautiful story. It was a heartbreaking story. And I said, I'm going to solve this murder. I'm going to solve this unsolved murder. And I spent 2 years of my life thinking that I was going to. And admittedly, there were points where I said, maybe I'm playing a little bit of Geek Freud here. Maybe I'm connecting dots where there aren't dots to be connected. But I went back to Cleveland. I flew to Cleveland. I went through the old plain dealer, microfiche, and I saw and found in there, I said, let me see what Jerry Siegel was reading the day his dad dies. Let's see what he was reading the very day after he loses his dad. And this is true. I went and found a letter to the editor in that paper. It was about why vigilantes should not exist in society. And the letter was signed A.L. Luthor.
Right.
Just like Lex Luthor, spelled with an E-R instead of an O-R. I said, is this where we get Lex Luthor from? And no one knows this story because no one's as much a loser as me and cares.
And looked it up, but yeah.
But I loved it, and I love those details, and I throw, I don't want to
You threw that into the book
I throw
a little bit,
I
right.
throw those details into the book, and people always say, is this real, is this real, is this real? And they're real. I mean, I know it's a mystery and it's a thriller, but to me, mysteries are their best, and thrillers are their best when you learn something that's true about history.
That's going to work as a perfect segue then, because I think we've given enough folks at home. Grab the book. I want to talk a little bit about some of the unique ways you advertise for the book, and then some of the things you're doing outside to help some of the people in the novel.
Let me, but before we hit there, the
okay.
one thing I would love to touch on is I also love to tell you about the Cain and Abel side, because I think
please,
there is a
please
story
do,
there.
Please do.
And in this one, it was interesting to me because a friend of mine said to me, I had pitched this Cain and Abel story years ago, and I had this Superman side of the story, but it was only half a story. And a friend of mine said to me, the story of Eve and the apple in the Garden of Eden? And I said, yeah. And he says, because the word apple doesn't appear in the Bible. So what are you talking about? He says, look at the Bible. The apple is not there. What it says, in reality, in the translation, is it says fig or fruit.
Right, fruit.
The word apple was put there by the Greeks because apples were a sign of destruction when they translated it into Greek. And then he said, what did Cain use to kill Abel? I saw a rock. And he says, some say it's a rock, some say it's a stone, but that's not in the Bible. The Bible story of Cain and Abel is 16 lines, and all it says is Cain slew his brother. So some say it's a rock or stone. Others say, including Shakespeare, that it's the jawbone of an animal.
Right.
Some say that Cain bit Abel's throat, and that's where we get vampires from. And I love that story. I'm fascinated by the story. And I love the translation. Again, I won't ruin the book, but that Cain just maybe may not be the bad guy in this story. That's fascinating to me. So now
that was a neat angle.
Right, and now I have these two stories. One gives us the world's first villain in Cain, one gives us the greatest hero in Superman, and the theme suddenly got bigger. Bigger than I'd ever really tackled before, but I feel like that's where the Book of Lies really came alive.
I'm glad you went there, and thanks for keeping me on track with that. But I was amazed when you read that. I said, how is he going to fit all this? How is this possibly going to come all together? And as usual, you pulled it off, and it all came together. But the Cain and Abel thing especially is very interesting, where that leads, where the novel leads with that. It's some real interesting stuff, and I'm always intrigued by, obviously you must do so much research when you're just from talking about the Cleveland or the religious aspect of the novel here that plays in, and some of the other elements that I won't discuss because they kind of come in the middle of the novel, and it's really fun when you start reading. But obviously research is huge for you, and for a lot of writers it's not that I research. Obviously you're painstaking in your research and in the stuff, and I credit you for doing that.
I appreciate it.
I think you do an amazing job. But I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the promotion you do, and then some things going on with the novel. First, I wanted to say I think it's interesting that unlike a lot of your contemporaries, not only do you have the people who read you because you're a New York Times bestseller, but you're kind of, this show is for geekdom and people that really embrace pop culture and things of that nature. And as a man who wrote the Justice League and made that a bestseller, man that wrote the Green Arrow, and you're doing all kinds of other comic work, you certainly have a certain eye or a certain way of writing characters that people just obviously love. New York Times bestseller, but also the comic side of things. Now Wizard Magazine, that really helps promote that type of pop culture and comic books and stuff, has just been amazing in promoting your novel. 2 months in a row you had big fold out. One you had in September, a very nice article about you and very glowing words about your novel. And then in this newest issue, the entire first chapter. So I'm very impressed, and if you wanted to talk a little bit about trying to bring that market in, that maybe some of these comic folks reading and loving your work on Justice League, reading and loving your work, and you just recently did a one-shot for DC. Do you think that there's a significant market there that you'll be pulling in that may love your comic work and now discover, hey, here's a great new New York Times bestseller, and there's 5 other novels out there you can pick up?
The best part of this isn't saying, I got more people to read the books. The best part is realizing that people love good story. Do you go see, when I go see a movie, I don't go see romantic comedies and romantic comedies only. I like to see romantic comedies, well, not really, but, I like to see the big action blockbuster, but then I like to see the small art house film.
Sure.
And then I like to see the big dumb blown up movie, and then I want to see some with subtitles, and we're all complex. So it was just amazing to me that I have all these comic readers who would say, you know, I've never tried your novels, I'm going to give it a shot. They did it really with Book of Fate, because Book of Fate was in the back of the Justice League, and so they really got to read the first chapter and say, you know what, this is interesting. And what I love when I go to these signings that there are people who bring comics. They'll bring stacks of comics, Identity Crisis, Green Arrow, runs on Justice League, and then they'll buy a novel and say, I'm going to take a shot. And I love that bravery. I love someone that says, you know what, I gave you a shot here, and let's see if you can do it again. And if it works, great. If not, you know, to me, I don't care what the genre is. I don't care if it's, you know, literary fiction, genre fiction. I don't care if it's comic books, comic strips, coloring books, whatever it is. You know, people think it's a hierarchy, and somehow literary fiction's at the top, and somewhere in the bottom is comics. And I just don't believe that. I think in any subgenre, 90% of it is garbage, and 10% of it is gold. Gold. And the question is what's the gold?
Right.
And I think, you know, we find the Watchmens of the world, and we find the Dark Knights of the world, and we find those things that we love. And if people will go find a Justice League and then go find the Book of Lies, great. I just love that people are willing to say, you know what, I like more than one thing, and I don't want to just eat, you know, the same flavor my whole life.
I was just really impressed with it, and I think it's neat that you can bring in the two different groups, and hopefully they can find, I like to read a good comic, I like to read a good novel. It's not often you can find somebody that's doing both, although that's becoming something more and more, folks like yourself, David Morrell, and different people writing that stuff, but I think that's very interesting. Another thing you did that's interesting is the soundtrack that you have available, and I think this is a real neat idea. Tell us a little bit about the soundtrack that you're making available for the novel.
Yeah, there's a soundtrack for the Book of Lies, the companion soundtrack from Sony Music and Victor Records. And does a novel need a soundtrack? No. But is it cool to have a soundtrack? Yes, it is cool. Yes. Why is it cool? Because we got REM. And why is it cool? Because we got the Greatest American Hero theme. And that's cool. And why is it cool? Because there's a guy who wrote a real song called The Book of Lies. And I don't care if it's the worst song on this planet. It has the word The Book of Lies, and it's about my novel. That's the greatest song of all time to me. And it was fun for me to pick it out. The one thing that I'm really proud of is we actually did a whole instrumental section. So you can actually read chapter 1 of the book and listen to the score of the novel. And we went back and forth, and I threw away half their songs. We got another half that came in. But it is as close as I can give you when you hit play on your iPod and you listen to this and you read, as close as I can give you to what I'm hearing in my own head emotionally as I write the book. And especially, cool. You know, I always say, if you do nothing, read the last chapter and play the last chapter on the soundtrack. It's just perfect to me. It's the perfect match of music and what the words are saying on those pages.
I haven't done that with the music yet, but I'm going to. I thought that was a really neat idea, actually, and I think that's it's kind of like having a director's cut to a DVD. Read the novel and then go through again and do it with your music.
You know, it's not anything more than some Barnum stunt. But I also think, why not try it? No one's ever done it before. Let's try, and that's the best thing to do, is to try what hasn't been done.
Okay, now Brad, I've always known you as a great guy and a caring person, and you're showing that again with the foundation you've created to help Jerry Siegel and a house that's really not been cared for that should be. And Superman's creator. Tell us about how you're trying to save this house.
Sure. You know, when I was researching the Book of Lies, I went to Cleveland. I got to see, where was Superman actually created? Where's the house where this young 17-year-old sat up in bed and said, I have an idea? And I figured it would be, you know, right out of a Norman Rockwell painting, and there'd be apple pie waiting for me on the front porch. The house where Google was founded is protected, but the house where Superman was created is a mess. And I don't just mean it needs a little bit of paint. I mean that it's a wreck. There's holes in the walls, holes in the ceiling. There's a great family, kind family that lives there, but they can't physically do it all themselves financially. And the woman who lives there said to me, you know what, Brad, do you know Cleveland, Ohio won't even give us a plaque to say that Superman was created here? Not even a plaque. And I said to her, I'm going to get you your plaque, and I said, I'm going to be back. And I didn't know what I was going to do. And I just started calling people in the entertainment industry and comics all over and just telling them the story. And when I would tell them the story, they'd all say the same thing: just tell me what you need me to do. I'm in, tell me what you need me to do. And I believe ordinary people change the world. I don't care where you went to school. I don't care how much money you make. That's nonsense. I believe in regular people, and that's how movements get started. And I believe in the greatness in all of us. And I believe in Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster, two kids who were so poor, they used to draw on the back of wallpaper, and they gave us Superman. So we started this website called OrdinaryPeopleChangeTheWorld.com. And when you go to the site, you can bid on some of the great Superman art drawn by amazing artists. You can, David Letterman submitting something.
Oh, wow.
Stephen Colbert's submitting something. We have the TV show Heroes. You can actually bid in our auction for a walk-on part in the TV show Heroes if you want to be on it.
Wow.
It's a spectacular auction, and it's not about me.
Right.
It's about people in the entertainment industry saying this is wrong, and we need to make it right. Our goal is to basically raise $50,000 just to do the outside of the house, and the first week of the auction ended yesterday, and we raised $34,000 just in the first week. We have 3 more weeks to go. We have the best items to get to. And if you go to ordinarypeoplechangetheworld.com, you will see the movement that we are trying to start. And it, I always thought that Superman was about, the nerd who gets the girl, but it's not. It's about the greatness within us.
Absolutely.
That's what Clark Kent represents, and that's what, to me, this site is really about.
Well, I think it's absolutely fantastic. And folks at home, I didn't mention Brad's website yet, so if you say, hey, that's really something I want to contribute to, that's something I want to help out, go to his website, bradmeltzer.com. We've had it up throughout the show. If you weren't able to get the info, we'll of course have it up at our link at cult-pop.com, and we'll have all the information to either get you to his website or the foundation he's talking about to help that movement out. I was just touched when I read about that.
It.
I think that's fantastic. We've got a few minutes left, and I'd like to talk a little bit about the comics, if you don't mind.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Some of the great work you've done. You've got a brand new collection. The Justice League, the Lightning Saga, is now out in a nice hardback edition, which is really nice. The Green Arrow, I just saw in a nice reissued edition. You've got a one-shot from DC, and I understand you're going to be doing some future work for some other companies. So just kind of bring us up to speed on all that's new in the comic world.
Yeah, no, listen, everyone knows I love the comic book side. I'm happy that the first collection of the Justice League work, The Tornado's Path, is actually coming out right now, also in paperback, so it's finally cheap and affordable. And there's obviously extras in the back. We did that kind of director's cut and commentary. And the new comic work, I just did Last Will and Testament, but the next one is actually Buffy the Vampire Slayer. So I'm going to work on that with Joss Whedon and do the comic book season 8 version that he's doing. Needless to say, all he had to do was ask. I'm honored to do it. And I come toward the end of the run, so that's always fun, because that means you get to find out what's really going to happen.
Now, I'm interested in that, where you, obviously I think you get a lot of free reign in what you do because of who you are, but in something like that where you're kind of jumping into somebody else's universe, does that make you, you're passionate about it, but do you feel restrictions, or do you feel like just a great joy in being able to be a part of the universe?
It's the same thing when you write Superman. There's nothing like putting words in Superman's mouth. I mean, that's a cool day of the job. You write Superman and you put words in Superman's mouth. And I love writing my novels. I love writing the Book of Lies, but there's nothing like doing that. And it's the same with Buffy to me. Here's a great character that we all know, we all love. And I'm thrilled to be there, and I'm at the same time a little bit terrified, because it's so many people have knit beautiful pieces before. You don't want to mess up the quilt. But hopefully Josh won't kill me too much.
Brad, while I've got a minute or two left, I'm not the first, but I liked the first Superman movie, but it wasn't as great as it could be. I want to start the movement. I think you should personally be writing either the second or third installment of Superman movie. I'm sorry, of the Superman movie. Absolutely love Superman, and I think the movie was good, but not as good as it could be. With your background of doing Jack and Bobby, you've got the TV background, so you certainly know about scripts and such. Is that something that you would be interested in tackling?
If they called, I certainly wouldn't. I'd answer the phone. But only so many dreams can come true. Okay,
well, Brad, while we've got 1 minute left, why don't you go ahead and tell the folks at home again your website and then the foundation's website if people are looking into either donating or the auction or any of that type stuff.
Sure. The website is bradmeltzer.com, and you can read the first chapter of any of the books and all the short stories we put up there. You can see video trailers for the book. And you can also go to ordinarypeoplechangetheworld.com to see the Superman house and to see the auction and what we're doing there. And you can go buy t-shirts, you can go make a donation, even $10, it's appreciated. And more important, thanks for all the support with those books.
Well, thank you so much, Brad. Folks at home, we've covered a lot on the show today, and as always I tell you this, if you didn't get the author's information, there's a lot we've covered you're going to want to get down, just go to our website, www.cult-pop.com. You can rewatch the entire episode, and all the contact information for what Brad's talked about today is easily linked right there at the website. So we'd like you to go and take a look at that, and some previous interviews that Brad did with us in the past, so you can take a look at those also. Brad, it's an absolute pleasure. You're one of my favorites. Thank you so much, and we look forward to seeing you folks next time on Cult Pop.
No matter what type of home renovation you're planning, put this at the top of your to-do list. Make sure your family is up to date on the tetanus vaccine, because after 10 years, none of you are protected against tetanus and another potentially fatal disease, diphtheria. A minor injury, such as a cut or a scrape, can put you at risk for a tetanus infection. And while safety gear offers some protection, an up-to-date vaccination called the TD booster is your best insurance against tetanus. If it's been more than 10 years since your last booster, then it's not just your house that's out of date, it's you. If it's been 10, do it again. Talk to your healthcare provider to find out if it's time for a TD booster or visit nfid.org.